Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, your host from Villanova University, and my co-host, my partner, my buddy, my pal, the great Sonny Sparrow, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, Sonny?
Had a little ring to that, Chuck. My
You
partner,
like
my
that?
buddy, my pal. Yeah.
Again, like every time we do this, I have no idea what I'm going to say when I introduce you. Yeah, we come up with stuff all the
You're
time,
not
but
supposed to say that, man. You're supposed
well,
to say
listen,
work on
you can
this.
pull the curtain back a little bit. Not as far as the Georgetown guys did a few weeks ago, but they pulled it too far back.
Too far.
We'd like
The
to every
back of the
once in a while
box.
give somebody a glimpse behind the scenes of a
Yeah.
professional outfit like the Big East Rewind, Sonny.
We are professional journalists. We've said that.
Hey, listen, we claim that. I'm sticking with that, and that's
I'm
my
sticking
and
with
I'm
that
sticking
too,
with it.
baby.
You know, so
Until we
so
get
listen,
exposed.
Sonny, we have another view, another perspective of the Big East today. You know,
Yes, we do.
this guy is a former professor, which maybe he can help you out a little bit, and your friends over there at Syracuse with some of the classes that you guys took from when we talked to Roosevelt and we talked to some of these people that you got a guy tap dancing and you got another guy getting hooked on phonics. At least maybe we got a professor now that can help out over there. What do you think, son?
I think we're going to dig into Villanova's curriculum pretty soon.
Listen,
That's what we're going to do.
Villanova's on the up and up, man. There's nobody tap dancing
Sure
at
it is.
Villanova.
Sure it is.
Believe me when I tell you.
Yeah,
If
you
there
don't
was,
have
I would have
last year.
taken it, Sonny. Come on. Anyway, without any further ado, today's guest is a Rhode Island radio and TV Hall of Famer, son.
Hall of Famer, another one.
Another Hall of Famer on the show. We too many to count now. Do you know that?
That's right.
Too many to count. 33 years, he's the voice of Gillette Stadium with the Patriots, and that means he has one less ring than Tommy Touchdown, Sonny. He's got one less ring than Brady. That's pretty good. Pretty good. For a guy that never stepped on the field, that's pretty good. I like that. He's the co-host of This Week in the Big East with our buddy and friend of the show, Kevin McNamara, and 36 years as the voice of the Providence College Friars basketball program. The great John Rooke is joining us. How are you, John? Thanks for coming on.
Guys, you're spoiling me here. All right. So I think what I'll do is when we're done is I'll sign you guys up as my agents. Okay.
All right. That's good.
As long as you don't mind.
Yeah. Hey,
listen,
Chuck took some courses in that.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, radio doesn't pay the freight. School does, professoring does. So
right.
You guys probably are all too aware of that. But thank you for having me. I've been a fan of the pod for some time. So it's an honor to be asked to be on the show.
Well, I appreciate you coming out. And listen, it's a fun thing too, because we like to get everybody's perspective of the conference, including the media guys and everybody. So I'm anxious to hear you talk about your experiences with not only
nobody has a better seat in the house than you do.
Yeah, you got the best seat going.
Except for when the coach, creeps up to the coaching box line, and then his butt is right in my face.
Well, listen, Coach Cooley's not there anymore. You got to have a view with Kim.
It was a lot worse, Chuck, when Cooley was here. Because then I would be doing this, and I'd be going back and forth and trying.
Coach is a big guy, and not like Kim. Kim English is a little.
Yeah. Well, but Kim is like Spider-Man, so his arms are always up and extended, and so I've still got to kind of look, up and around, everything like that, and of course, then he turns around and he sees me doing one of these things, trying to look around, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me get out of your way," and I'm like, "Coach, you're coach of the game. I'm just sitting here, I'm here because you're here, so no big deal."
They need to give you like the coaches have a coach's box. They need a radio and TV box so you guys can stand and move.
That would be helpful. Right? It used to be once upon a time that and a lot of them, when we have the space, a lot of the TV crews will actually put a monitor over there, and so there were times in the past where when we first started doing the games from that side of the floor, right next to the team bench, which is the primary position, I think, for most radio teams, although not everybody is in that situation. Xavier's up off the floor now, and a couple of others are on the opposite side of the floor on the camera side. But they actually, TV cameras TV crews would put a monitor there next so we could see what they were talking about. And if there was ever a great replay, that was perfect. The problem with our position, in Providence at the now Amica Mutual Pavilion, everybody wants to keep calling it the Dunk. It's the Dunk, right?
Duncan
Yeah.
Center,
Yeah, of course. I mean, could there ever be a better nickname for a basketball arena? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Other than the Garden? No, not definitely not. But
can't tell where you're
we're-
from. Just so you know.
exactly.
I didn't hear you say
God,
Madison. The
Madison
Garden.
Square.
We know you mean the Boston Garden.
No. I'm at Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
To
do
me,
you?
that's the
Oh,
Garden.
I'm
Mecca,
sorry. I
son.
would have figured
Come on.
Boston Garden. Okay.
No.
I'm sorry. You need more credit from me. I'm sorry.
Well, because I'm a Big East guy, so I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
true.
I can follow
That's
the
it.
Celtics, but I hated the Celtics. I hated the Celtics, Jordan, because I worked in the NBA well before I came up to the Northeast. I worked in radio and TV for San Antonio. So the Celtics were like arch rivals because we could never beat them. We
Right.
only played them, twice a year, once, up in the Northeast and once in San Antonio. So everybody would go, nuts when the Celtics were in town, and they always whipped us. Always whipped us. Back in the day of Larry Bird and, Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale and all those guys. So and now that I've gone off on a tangent, I forgot what the hell I was talking about.
Well, we'll bring you back on track. Don't worry.
Thank you.
You're in good hands with Sonny and I. Don't even worry about it. So
we're talking about the TV monitors. We're talking about the TV.
Right.
So the way that our setup is, we're about 10 feet down from where the officials go to, look at the monitors and look at the replay and decide if they, made the right call or the wrong call or whatever. And so they stopped pulling a monitor down to us because they thought we could see it. And the answer to that is, well, sure, yeah, we could see it if we had 10-foot necks, which we don't. Hassett does, I don't. So it's not the easiest thing in the world, but we learn to manage. That's all you can do. You learn to manage. The one thing you can get by sitting right next to the bench is you get a lot of insight. Sometimes it's quite colorful. When the one of the segments that I love that Fox does when they go in the huddle and they do the night sound with the coaches and all that kind of stuff. They can only play the ones that are suitable, for all audiences. G-rated. and Joe Hassett, my partner, and I were privy to a lot of really juicy things.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And I know it's the other way on the other side of the floor. Places like Connecticut and every place. It's all that way. And when we get in the middle of January and it's dog eat dog, everybody's jumping. So that's what makes it fun, though. That's why this league is so unique and has been for so long.
Yeah, we know about guys that scream like that. I think, thank God they didn't have that when Boeheim and Coach Massimino were both in their prime back in the mid '80s and '90s.
Oh no, yeah, right.
Forget about it. Go ahead, son.
That's how I learned a couple of words that I didn't know. Listen to those guys. They meet, center floor, and a lot of that is, like, hey, you guys are pretty bleeping good, or hey, you kind of got bleeped up here, or what. I mean, it's just you hear this stuff in regular conversation, and it's kind of like, wow, turn the mics down. We're not supposed to air that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's nice though that that between Coach Cooley and Coach English that they have restored Providence to a very respectable level now, and it's hard. In the smaller schools, it's tough.
Yeah, I would tell you that I think the reincarnation of the Big East has probably been really good for Providence. Really good for Providence. And let's face it, when you pull the Catholic Seven aside, what do they really have in common with those schools that left for the ACC, other than maybe Boston College? But even then, Boston College is a large Catholic school, not quite as big as DePaul, but a large Catholic school. And so you have to understand that when you're competing in that kind of a universe and you've only got 4,000 undergraduates, it's a sheer numbers game. The Friars, Dave Gavitt a debt of ingratitude for making certain that they were going to be in whatever they put together. And of course, Dave it was his idea anyway. This was his Big East is his baby. And he had to sell it to Rowley, and he had to sell it to Jim Boeheim, and he had to sell it to everybody.
Louis,
John Thompson, and they bought it grudgingly, as I think we all understand the history. But once it got rolling, I think everybody understood, the power of this thing. And Providence is just kind of, lopped along and lopped along. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a small, Catholic institution, smallest in Division One, in a power conference anyway, that doesn't play football. And then number two, I think that the college hierarchy, the administration at the time, they weren't sold that athletics could do what athletics has done for all of us over the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
I used to hear, the snide remarks and the jokes and things like that, with all due respect to the good fathers, that, most of the priests at Providence College had their heads buried in the 1950s and they hadn't come out. And so when the Big East rolled around, it's kind of like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. Yay. We're playing basketball at high level against some like member schools. And but they never really realized the power of it until we got to Father Shanley, Brian Shanley, who now, of course, is at St. John's. And Father Shanley and Bob Driscoll, who was the AD at the time, they got it, especially from a fundraising point of view. And I should point out as well that, before Bob Driscoll's, John Marinato, and John Marinato, obviously, as you guys know, ended up replacing, Mike T as commissioner of the Big East for a while, and had to try to keep this mishmash of schools together.
Yeah.
Because of football. Before football kind of, took care of everything back then. And John doesn't get the credit. Obviously, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he doesn't get the credit that he deserves for trying to. I think the analogy that I've used before, he's trying to plug all the holes in the boat, and there were just too many holes in the boat, and he kept filling up with water, and it eventually, flooded. And that's really what happened. But he was only doing what the presidents of the schools at the time were doing. That's what a commissioner is supposed to do, right? So, once he moved on, and then the new Big East came into play, these guys decided this is our chance really to be on an even playing field. And so they've taken advantage of that. And I think Ed Cooley did a magnificent job while he was here.
Yeah.
I was just as surprised as anybody else, guys, when he decided, to leave, especially for Georgetown, because I would have been in the corner of, if Ed Cooley leaves, he's going to leave for two things. Number one, he's going to leave for the NBA, or number two, he's going to leave for TV. I thought that he might go to another college job if it were at a football school, an FBS school, where he could go in and, he could go in and be the Tom Izzo at Michigan State somewhere,
Yeah.
And I thought that might appeal to him. And lo and behold, when I had heard that his daughter, who was graduating from Georgetown, was staying in Washington, D.C., that's when I went, uh-oh.
That was telling. Yeah.
I just said, that doesn't, I don't know. There's something there. And sure enough, that's when the whole thing, started to come about. So, hey, wish him luck. But you know what? Twice a year, hope the Friars beat his ass.
So listen, you were at that game, obviously. That was must-see TV, John. I mean, when the Hoyas came in to play Providence, and first of all, I have to say, I love the environment in Providence at a Big East basketball game. I think it's one of the best college crowds. In the student section is great. I mean, everybody's loud. It was fun. I mean, I've been there with a couple of my teammates. Mark Plansky's up that way.
Yeah.
So Mark and I go to games up there sometimes. Sure. And man, we got booed just walking across the court to go say hello to you guys on the other side. It's right. Like.
Well, I remember you guys come over. So when you come back with Plansky again, you have to make sure you come over and say hello, Joe.
Oh, it certainly will.
The crowd at the AMP is unique, and I think part of it is because they've managed to configure really a building that was built for hockey. They've managed to configure it very, very well for basketball. The students, even though they're not behind the benches, they are literally breathing on your neck, underneath the baskets on both sides. And not for nothing, but hey, these kids know what a tall boy is.
They certainly do.
and they understand that. And of course, then we have, all of our high roller donors that, sit courtside, and some of them are notorious because they get on TV all the time. And, I've gotten to know, and actually friendly a little bit with a lot of the officials in the conference. That's why I have to watch what I say sometimes. But they, they know all these guys. They know these fans because, and they know what they're capable of, and they know, how threatening they can sometimes be and appear. And nobody's really serious. Nobody's really serious. But you guys remember when Jason Williams at St. John's got into that ruckus at the then Providence Civic Center, and a chair got thrown into the stands. And when was that? Back in the, what was that, mid to late 80s?
Yeah, late.
Or was it early 90s?
It might have been early. It was either late 80s or early 90s, because he came in after,
right in that time frame. And so since that point in time, that's when the reputation of that building has kind of preceded itself. Because I tell you, on a typical night, the fans are fine. They get on the opposing team, but I mean, where do they not get on opposing teams?
They're supposed to. That's college basketball. That's the beauty.
So tell us about the environment the night that Coach Cooley came back into town.
Well, I'll preface it by saying this, that we were told to try not to do anything inflammatory. Gesture to the crowd. I mean, people that are sitting in the stands aren't necessarily listening to us anyway. But and that someone jokingly made the suggestion that Joe and I should wear hard hats, because they did a good job of screening people coming into the game, because they didn't want anybody throwing anything on the floor. We feared quarters, dimes, nickels, batteries. We actually feared that for a while. But I was very proud of the crowd. They were loud. Some of them were extra rude. A lot of them were lubed. But that's okay, because that's what this is all about. Ed had his earful, which is fine. And I think he expected that. I think he knew that that was going to happen. But for people who really took his departure personally, I'm not sure why. Everybody has a right to go, do what's best for themselves, right? I mean, you going to turn down, a 50% pay raise? I don't think so.
No.
Who's going to do that? Nobody. So, okay. But there were a lot of people that were, and my favorite phrase here, there were a lot of people that were butthurt over this one. Okay.
Yeah.
It felt like they had been spanked. They felt like, they had been left at the altar. They felt betrayed. There was a huge feeling of betrayal here.
Betrayed.
How could you do that and go off to a fellow Big East school? Because, we've had this, it hasn't been against the law, but we've had this unwritten rule since the days that, Dave Gavitt, roamed the sidelines himself, that we don't do this to a fellow brethren.
Yeah.
And that was how the Big East was built, guys.
Yeah.
The Big East was built for, we're going to pound each other. But once we're off the floor, we're shaking hands and we're buddies and we're rooting for you.
We've said that a lot, John, during the course of this show that we've been doing for 4 years now. And it's interesting because you don't see a Duke guy rooting for North Carolina, no matter who they're playing, But meanwhile, we're rooting for Georgetown. We're rooting for Providence. We're rooting for St. John's, as long as they're not playing, somebody else. If they're playing somebody else, we're rooting for the Big East guy,
And that's one of the things, guys, that I've always loved about the Big East. I love that, because you don't get it anywhere else. I mean, I'm from Texas, okay? I went to the University of Texas. I will never, ever root for Texas A&M. Ever. Never.
Right.
I don't care. The ground could open up and swallow them, and I could care less. Okay. So, somebody asked me every year, who do you root for when Texas A&M plays Oklahoma? And I said, I root for an earthquake. So, but here, I enjoy this rivalry because it's contained to the floor. And it spills over a little bit here and there. And I love the fact that it spills over online, and fan groups online, can yap at each other.
I'll tell you something. We had Coach on recently, and he did a great job. We had a great time with him. But some of the feedback on our social media posts, holy smokes, people went crazy, And
He's a polarizing figure right now.
polarizing figure. Listen,
And
there was
he had
big
to know that was
rivalries
coming.
back in the 80s. You got the Syracuse, Georgetown rivalry, Villanova, St. John's, Villanova, Georgetown. It's good. It's healthy for the league that you have a rivalry like that. It sells
Well,
tickets, it puts fannies in seats, and it's good for the game.
it's good for the game. It's good for the league, Chuck. It really is. It's a we've got some we've got some venom back in the Big East. We've got for lack of a better phrase, we've got an old Big East feel back in the Big East again.
Yes, I agree.
And that's if it took Ed Cooley betraying Providence College to go to Georgetown,
Wait, did you just say betraying?
50% more than he was making here, right?
Did you just use that word, betraying? That was a Freudian slip. That's true.
Listen, that's the way Providence fans feel.
I know. No, I do. I feel it. I heard it. I mean,
yeah, and Sonny, I would tell you that I still consider Ed a friend. I still have his phone number in my Rolodex. I still have and he texts every once in a while. Hey, how's it going? Friendships don't just die. He's got a job to do, so I know he's a little busy. But friendships don't die after you establish one for a number of years if you're truly a friend. So people don't know this. I go way back with Ed. Well, he was an assistant coach, fresh out of Stonehill, and he was an assistant coach at University of Rhode Island, where Al Skinner hired him.
Yeah, with Al Skinner. Yeah.
And then he followed Al to Boston College, and so Ed's got Big East all through his veins. And when he was at Boston College, that was when I was doing Boston College football on the radio up in Boston, and there were a couple of occasions where I would slide over and do a basketball game every now and then if my schedule allowed it, because there were some conflicts and travel things or whatever. And so whenever I would travel with BC basketball, Ed and I would end up rooming together.
Yeah.
And so, Ed and I were roomies on the road for a long, long, long time, on and off, once or twice a year, but, for 5, 6, 7 years. And of course, he left to go to Fairfield. We wished him well. And, he got his first job as a head coach. And then when I'd heard that he was coming to Providence, I said, yeah, maybe this could work out. I mean, he paid his dues. He's learned how to be a head coach. And it took him a couple of years to get it started at Providence. But, the one knock on Providence, and you guys know this as well as anybody because you've been around the league long enough, but there was always the thought that you could not recruit kids to go to Providence. We're stuck in this little hamlet off of I-95, between Boston and New York. And if you're going to get off I-95, you might as well get off in Storrs, Connecticut, because they play basketball there or whatever. And Providence was just a blip in the road. You blink, you miss it. And you couldn't get kids to go to an inner city school like that. And I think that was a mindset really for a lot of people for a long time until, Tim Welsh started to, well, the first person that obviously proved you could, win was Rick Pitino.
Right.
But then Rick went off to chase his dreams, when the Knicks came calling. And so that set Providence back. Rick Barnes had some very good years, but again, he was, all about the Benjamins. And the school administration at the time didn't want to pay to keep him. And so he left to go to Clemson. Pete Gillen came in and Pete, of course, came to Providence from Xavier. And Pete was great. Pete was magnificent. Again, Pete's also still a friend to these days. We run into each other on the road all the time, especially he's doing stuff for CBS Sports Network. And Pete was the same thing. He wasn't going to get the commitment from the administration that Rick didn't get, that Rick Pitino wasn't around long enough to get, and Dave Gavitt wasn't involved any longer. And so Pete, that's when he took off for UVA, for Virginia. And then Tim Welsh came in, and, Tim was a young guy, had been at Iona, and, young upstart, and he was a right fit at the right time. But Tim could only get us so far because of the commitment of the administration at Providence. I shudder to think what would have happened if NIL had existed back in those days. Oh. Providence would not be competitive.
No,
they wouldn't be competitive.
I agree
Tim
with you.
Took it about as far as he could take it. Keno Davis came in. I love Keno personally. Keno wasn't ready for a job of that magnitude. and Bob Driscoll realized that, and then. So we said we're going to give Ed a shot at it because Ed has his head coaching experience. He has a Big East background. He's a former player. He's an inner city guy, and we think he can recruit. His reputation was as a recruiter, and damned, took a couple of years to do it, but he did it. And Providence started winning more consistently. Still couldn't win in March, but that's another story for another day.
He built a pretty good culture there too, didn't he, John? I mean,
yeah.
I know they do a lot with their basketball alums. Our mutual friend Harold Starks helps with that a lot, But
yes, he does.
They've
done a really good job of reaching out to a lot of the basketball alumni. And
they did an event. They had like over 100 basketball alums come back, which was awesome. With all the different coaches. They had Billy come back and Otis, and everybody came back. It was really nice to see.
We see Otis quite often, 2 or 3 times a year. We hear from Billy, although obviously he's got his own coaching things to deal with, but we hear from him from time to time. The guy that we see a lot of is Eric Murdoch.
Eric's around.
Had a tremendous career in the NBA. Austin Crozier, we see him all the time. So these guys come around, and it's really cool when they come up and they tap us on the shoulder, and we're in the middle of a broadcast, and they just want to wave and they want to say hello, and that's somewhat gratifying to know that their time at Providence was that meaningful, and there was some talent, and has been some talent, and to see what Kim is doing now in trying to galvanize this and become a team that can be reckoned with in March is pretty exciting stuff, and I can understand why Friar fans would be fired up about that.
I tell you what, I love the way they play. He's got them firing on all cylinders, man. I really enjoy watching them.
Well, the way that he describes it, you guys are certainly familiar, with the terminology. They want to play, 4 out, which means 4 guys have the ability to basically have the green light to shoot it at any time. They tried to do that last year. They didn't have the personnel. Personnel. I mean, all you had to do was look at UConn, and you can understand that. Hey, I mean, anybody compared to UConn, but I mean, UConn had shooters, and Providence didn't have enough shooters. I think this year they will be closer to getting to the way that they want to play. They have, and I think he'll probably scream bloody murder, but they have a 7-footer that can shoot the 3. So that we'll see how often that happens, but it'll be interesting to see how they do this, because you guys know, we all know, the Big East has always been predicated on how tough you can be. Mm-hmm. It's like putting on the football pads and the helmet and let's go to war, right?
Yeah.
And you got to play defense, and you can't win the Big East if you can't play defense.
Right.
And that's something that we, that needs to be a constant. So we'll see if this team can do that. This day and age of, the portal and all that stuff that's going on, when you, remake your roster, like DePaul has completely remade its roster for this year. When you remake your roster like that, nobody knows what you're going to have. So it's easy to say, oh, they're going to finish last, or oh, they're going to do this, or oh, they're going to do that. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We don't know what Providence is going to do. You guys don't know what Villanova is going to do, or what UConn really going to do. We have a
how could you know? You got 10 new guys on the team. How could you know?
We have a reasonable expectation on Connecticut, but think about this: Connecticut only has 1 starter back from their national title team.
I know,
right.
And everybody said, "Oh, they got a chance to repeat. Oh, they can three-peat." I mean, like, what planet are you on? I mean, listen. I love Danny Hurley. Danny's great for the game. You were talking about things that were great for the game a little while ago, right?
Yeah.
He's great for the game because of the emotion that he brings. Maybe he stamps his foot a little too loudly, and people, yell at him for, yelling at the officials or pounding his fist on the table. Or, I mean, he's not really doing anything that Rowley didn't do, is he? I don't think so.
No.
So, I like the emotion. I think it's easy to get caught up in it, but I like the emotion, and I like the emotion that he's bringing, that Kim's bringing, that everybody's bringing, and one of the most respected coaches in the league is, Greg McDermott. And I love his coaching style. I think Greg McDermott is a fantastic coach.
Yeah.
And Creighton's very lucky to have him, and that, he wants to make his home there, because he could coach anywhere. McDermott.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
So did you call the Flutie to Phelan game?
No, that actually was the great Dan Davis who I actually worked with at ESPN a number of years ago before he retired. I didn't start doing BC until the late 90s. And then I worked with them through 05, 06. And then I went and then moved. Good career move here. I went from Boston College to doing Big East football.
So that's where it went. That's where it was going. They had to.
Yeah, no, but I mean, hey, network calls, and you can do a network package and not have to travel as much. And, to me, I thought it was a good move when you got, young kids still at home like I had at the time.
We just talked to the head of the Big East football, and still now he's in charge of all the bowls and stuff. Really interesting.
Oh yeah, exactly. And you're talking about
come on, Chuck Carparello, say it.
Thank you, Nick Carparelli. Thank you, Nick Carparelli. Yeah,
that's Italian. I was waiting for Chuck to throw the Italian in there. I gave him a shot.
I listen. He's your fellow countryman, son. I'll let you take the honors. You know how that goes.
Nick's
I don't want to have something happen to me.
Great guy. So John, tell us about Dave Gavitt. Give us a couple stories of dealing with Dave Gavitt. I mean, the man, visionary, legendary. I mean, there's not enough adjectives in the book to describe him.
I can tell you.
Tell us a little bit. Give us some insights into Dave Gavitt.
Sure. I obviously didn't know him as well as a lot of people at Providence knew him, because I came to Providence after he had already left as commissioner of the Big East.
Okay.
But he was obviously still very tight with Providence College. And so I remember when I met him for the first time, and we met at the Big East headquarters, because originally I moved. The story goes, long, boring story, but I'll make it very short. I moved from San Antonio, Texas, where I was working in television and was still working for the Spurs, to come up to the Northeast. And at first, it was ostensibly to work in television in Providence. I was going to work at one of the local affiliates, and I was going to work for what was then the Big East Television Network, because they needed somebody else to do games along with Mike Gorman, who, you guys remember, did the Big East Network games, and he and Dave Gavitt teamed up on all those games. But they wanted to increase the package, so they needed another full-time play-by-play team.
Right.
And so that's what I was going to do. And I don't know who I was going to work with, but they were going to pair me with somebody. And before that opportunity ever came around, that's when the radio job at Providence opened up. I just decided to pitch a tape, their way, and I got hired. And so that's how that happened. But I went and talked to Dave about, working for the Big East Television Network. And we were at the Big East their offices, and we sat at the big conference table that has the big plaque in the middle of it that says the Big East Conference was formed here, 1979. And so that was intimidating walking in. And Dave was great. He got up, shook my hand. He said, "This is what we're thinking about. This is what we'd like to do. What do you think?" And I said, "I'm all in. Let's go." I remember leaving there thinking, wow, what a great guy. How did he command, that kind of authority? And I later learned that it's because he let people around him do their jobs. And we don't have a lot of leaders in this day and age who really allow people to do that. So, Mike T was perfect for his job. Everybody else that was working in the Big East office at the time, perfect for the jobs, because Dave showed them, this is what we need to have done, and nobody wanted to let him down. My broadcast partner, Joe Hassett, who played for Dave, he said, Coach Gavitt was the kind of guy you just didn't want to disappoint. You felt like you were disappointing your dad.
Right.
And so they busted their tails for the guy. They respected the hell out of him. And I think he had that kind of a thought process with everybody in the Big East at the time that he was, trying to get this thing rolling. I know it was that way at Providence College, but then when he decided to step away at Providence College as the head coach and then the athletic director to go start this, Big East Conference, he wasn't going to leave Providence alone. He was pulling them along for the ride here. And so Providence certainly has been a benefactor of that over a number of years. But Dave just commanded his troops extraordinarily well. And I also appreciate it, even though, what I know wouldn't fill a thimble on his thumb, okay, in terms of basketball.
Yeah.
but he used to pull me aside, from time to time. Hey, what do you think of that call? Or what do you think of that play they ran out of the huddle? And he'd ask me my opinion. You talking to me, Coach? You talking to me, right? Um, I don't know if he was trying to be inclusive or if he really valued my opinion, or maybe it was a little bit of both. But I was flattered nevertheless. So he had my respect. He definitely had my respect. I worked in 1984. I worked for the Los Angeles Organizing Olympic Committee. And that, of course, as you recall, was 4 years after we boycotted, the Olympics in 1980 in Moscow.
Yeah, Moscow. Yeah.
Well, Dave Gavitt was the coach of that 1980 team that was boycotted, Team USA.
Right. Yep.
And so I actually knew Dave a little bit back then in '84 because he'd come to the Olympic Games and he wasn't coaching the team, but he was there and we had a chance to meet. And this was 3-4 years before I ever even moved to the Northeast. I was still in Texas at the time. And so I had a little bit of a working relationship with him at the time, not much, but it was, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember you. And well, your reputation precedes, itself, I think, Coach. And then we just started, throwing out names left and right. He was asking me about, the days in the NBA of guys like, George Gervin and Artis Gilmore and, and guys like that. And, and I'm throwing out names like, Ernie D and Marvin Barnes and, the guys that, he grew up with at Providence College. And so we hit it off real well. He was an easy guy to get along with. I'm very, happy to say that, his two sons, were friendly, and I'm still friendly, obviously, with Danny, as I know a lot of people are because of his, duties now with the NCAA. And I can't think of a better person to come in and handle that job than a guy like Dan Gavitt, because he's very much like his dad in that regard. So Dave took care of people, and
he sure did.
The way that he set this up for everybody to succeed. I mean, does Villanova have the championships that they have? Does UConn have the championships that they have without Dave's foresight in believing that this?
No, definitely not.
Could the Big East have put 3 teams in that '85 Final Four? I don't think so.
About 2 years in the existence of the conference, Georgetown's playing North Carolina for the championship. 2 years.
Pretty good.
You haven't even cut your teeth yet.
Pretty good.
Pretty amazing start to the league. And I think everybody realized really quickly. And we've had a lot of great writers, write books, on the history of the Big East. And I try to read every one of them because, there are always things that I find out that, wow, I wasn't aware of that, or, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I consider myself an okay historian of the league. I've been a broadcaster in the league for 36 out of the 45 years. So almost all of it. And the only one that's been doing it longer than me is Rich Chavakin at Georgetown. Right. Because he's been at Georgetown now. This will be his 51st year.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a reason why I've
outlasted Boeheim
as long as I wanted to stick around, because I enjoy it so much. This is like the NBA in a lot of ways with the talent that's out there.
He outlasted Boeheim. Boeheim was 48 years.
Yep.
So John, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. Okay. Sure. We mentioned it at the opening. Okay. Yeah. Did you you're the voice of Gillette Stadium. So you're the guy that everybody hears while the game is going on, correct? Mm-hmm. You're the guy that's another Patriot first down. Everybody goes crazy.
Brady to Gronkowski.
Did you?
Except I don't ever say the words. I don't ever say the words first down. I shut up and I let the crowd do it.
And everybody else first down. That's right. I've been to a game there. It's a pretty cool place to see a game. But that said, did they give you any hardware for all the championships that they won? Did you wind up with a nice collection of rings?
Well, collection, no. But I do have I do have a ring, and I have to explain because I don't want the Patriots. They're not as cheap as everybody seem to think that they are.
Nobody said that. Nobody here said that.
I didn't use that word, John.
Nobody's used that word.
Thanks. I just ran right over myself, didn't I? It was my 25th year with the team. So that was the Super Bowl 51 over Atlanta. The 28-3
great comeback
game.
That was the big comeback, right?
Yeah, that was the 28-3 comeback.
I hear from Plansky about that one all the time, man.
Yes, Arthur Blank will never go down to the sidelines again until the game's over.
No, and he shouldn't. Because I think that pissed off the entire Patriots team.
That's huge motivation. Never give those.
No question. No question. But I got a ring from that championship, and the reason I got it is because that was my 25th year with the team, and the policy had been from the very first Super Bowl that full-time employees got the hardware. I haven't been a full-time employee. I've been a contract part-time employee for now 33 years. I've been the stadium voice of the Patriots for more than half of their existence. This is their 65th year since the AFL was born in 1960.
Right.
I've been doing the games there for 33 of those 65 years. And that was my 25th year. And I happened to mention that to one of the marketing people. And then it was a function that we went to kind of get the next season started. Oh, we got something for you. They handed me a little bag with this box in it with a ring in it. And I was like floored. So I was grateful.
That's a good game to have one from, John.
Yeah.
I mean, that was we were at Coach Massimino's house, the 85 team. We would go down to visit him in Florida every year. And Mark Plansky comes in and gives Coach Mass a Patriots t-shirt. So he's wearing a Patriots t-shirt, and what's happening. We're killing both Dwayne McClain, who's from Worcester, and Mark. Mm-hmm. And went on and on and on to the point where Mark was outside smoking cigars. Next thing you know, Tommy Touchdown is doing his thing, and he's back in, and Coach Mess says, I'm going to bed. Now, we had 15 guys from the team there, managers, former coaches, players, everybody was there. And Mark, as they make the comeback, he jumps into bed with Mr. and Mrs. Coach and Mrs. Massimino and says, you got to get up. We're winning. We're winning. The coach came running in, and they were celebrating, and it was a lot of fun. So I have fond memories of that Super Bowl. I couldn't tell you a lot of things about a lot of other Super Bowls, but I could tell you about that one because we were all together at Coach's house, and it was great. Matter of fact, cool. I think that might have been the last time that we were all together. I think the group before he passed.
That leaves you with an impressionable memory, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. But Mark never lets me forget it anyway, whether it was with our last time with Coach or not. It's just that's just something that a New York guy and a Boston guy does, so.
Totally, right?
So,
you got a bunch of chops.
So what are some of your favorite game memories there when you were with the Patriots? You still are, but when you were doing games, what are some of your favorite memories from Gillette?
The one that I usually use as an example, I don't even remember who the hell we were playing, but it was the first time. This would have been, God, I got to think about it. I don't remember. A lot of people would understand because there's some minute details. So much has happened over the course of 33 years. It's hard to keep track of it all. But I remember it was a game. I want to say it was about 10 years ago, maybe. I think about 10 years ago or so. And that one of Bill Belichick's buddies is John Bon Jovi.
Right.
And so Bon Jovi would, come to one or two games a year, and he'd be on the sideline and people would spot him and yell and scream and yada, yada. And then he'd sit up in the owner's box with Mr. Kraft and, during the game because, he was buddies. And of course, the Patriots, when Bill was coaching, when they would, amp up the sound at practice to simulate crowd, they're always playing Bon Jovi songs, always, almost always. There was always Bon Jovi songs. And so they were buddies, but Patriots were behind in a game on the comeback trail. And there's a shot up from the stadium cameras because a lot of people don't realize this, but we actually do a separate television production inside the stadium for the 68,000 people. So we have our own control room, our own cameras, our own, everything, right? It's completely separate from what people see on television. We're performing basically for the crowd to engage them, to give them bang for the buck. It's, marketing 101, right? We got to give people a reason to keep coming back and spending that money. And so they, one of the sideline cameras gets a shot of John Bon Jovi up in the owner's box, and the people just went freaking nuts because our DJ at the time had the presence of mind to play Living on a Prayer. And the Patriots were, coming back. They were charging hard. And I think they had just, either they were within a score or just taking the lead. I can't remember specifically. But then the entire crowd started singing "Living on a Prayer," and Bon Jovi got up and started singing it with him. And it was the most unbelievably hair stand up on the back of your neck thing that
Yeah, that's
I've
pretty cool.
ever witnessed in a stadium. When he's leading the crowd, in singing every word to the max to "Living on a Prayer." So that was a cool moment.
That's
I felt
great.
like opening up the microphone and doing it myself, just because it was such a cool thing to be a part of. And then there are other games like the AFC Championship game, or the one against Pittsburgh in the deep fog in old
Yeah.
Foxborough.
Oh my God!
There are a couple of playoff games against Jacksonville that were noteworthy. We've had the game against Tennessee, the Titans, where it was 20 below, the chill factor out on. I've never been as cold in my life as that particular night. And the first time at Gillette, right after Gillette opened up, I want to say this is probably it was 01 or 02, one or the other, that it snowed. And that was when you saw Teddy Bruschi, after he returned a fumble or a pick for a touchdown, ran into the end zone, and then he started throwing snow up in the air. And so as soon as Teddy Bruschi did that, everybody in the crowd started throwing snow up in the air, and snowballs were flying. Well, I get a phone call from the press box that says, "Hey, could you make an announcement to tell people to stop throwing snow?"
Wow.
Really? Really? Because see, my windows guys
could be worse. They could be throwing them at Santa Claus like the Eagles fans did.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, my windows are wide open, guys. My windows are open. So all I had to do was say, fans, if you could please refrain from throwing snow on the field because it affects the play on the field. Bang, bang, bang. I had to duck because the snowballs were coming at me.
They were coming.
And so I told the Patriots, I said, "Look, if you ever ask me to do that again, I'll do what I'm asked to do. But when I get hit, you're gonna hit. Well, I'll see you in court."
Right.
Just like Nuke LaLoosh from Bill Durham. He's throwing it up in the press box.
It's
basically. So those are, just a handful of things.
That's cool. Yeah. Hey, listen, you've been there long enough. I mean, that you had to have something there. I had to find out about that. So we're getting close to it. Let's talk current day. You and our good friend Kevin McNamara you guys do a show for the Big East, right? This week in the Big East.
Yeah.
Let's talk some current day Big East. Who do you like? What do you think? How do you think the landscape is being? I know that's a loaded question because we just said that, you got 10 different guys on some of these teams. You don't know who's who, but what are your thoughts preseason?
I'm an advocate for, the king is the king until the king is dead. So I got to go with UConn up at the top of the list. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
I think they deserve to be there until somebody knocks them off, until somebody proves they can knock them off.
Yeah, they earned it.
That being said, I think UConn is likely more vulnerable than a lot of people think they are because of the fact there is just one starter. Now, I've heard about Solo Ball and a couple of other kids on the team that they really expect that they're going to develop this year, and given a chance, they might. Because there's still, you can't argue the talent, at least on paper, that they have. It's just that it's largely unproven talent. But I'm going to keep UConn up at the top. The team that I'm really intrigued by, that I think, again, could be a major factor nationally, is Creighton. With the foreign shooter that they just picked up. Kalkbrenner's back for what is his 75th year? Is that how long he's been there?
It seems like it, right? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's going to be a professor.
How many of these guys seem to get 7 or 8 years of eligibility? I don't know how you do that.
I'd like to do that. I'd go back to college.
You walk out of there with your degree and your master's degree, and
Yeah, totally.
I was going to go back, a little NIL job.
Yeah, well, hey, offer it up, Sonny. Let's go, right?
I'll just shoot free throws.
Exactly. I think Creighton will be very good. After that, I kind of have to. I'm leaning toward Marquette because I think Cam Jones could be Player of the Year in the league.
I think you're right.
I think he could be. If I had a vote, I think that's who I'd have to vote for. To be honest with you, I think that guy can score like nobody else in the league, and he's got an unbelievable shot. He's a natural talent, a natural ability, and I think the next two or three teams are all right now a little bit of an enigma. I think Xavier could be very good.
I was going to say Xavier. That was my next choice. Yeah.
Well, Xavier looks like on paper that they could be very good, but we just don't know.
You don't know till you know.
If those guys who were out last year, Fremantle, in particular, how they're going to react after having been out for a year, you know?
And one thing, Seton Hall is going to bring it every game.
Well, I was just going to say that St. John's and Seton Hall are playing with a chip on their shoulder. And Providence too. I mean,
they always do.
Providence too. You know,
after those first three, I would lump in together, you know, Providence, Xavier, Seton Hall. I mean, Providence, Xavier, St. John's. I think any one of those three could be, you know, any one of those three teams could be in the top three, and any one of those teams could be as low as 6.
John, what were your thoughts on Kadary jumping ship from Seton Hall to St. John's, moving across, you know, down the highway, and now he's at St. John's? Back when we played, you couldn't do that. I mean, that was taboo, pretty much.
Yeah, that was a 2-year.
The rule in the league was that if you wanted to transfer within the conference, you had to sit out 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and I can understand why a lot of people would see that today as basically being unfair, but it was to keep Dave Gavitt's original tenet in place for the Big East. That, hey guys, we're going to battle against each other tooth and nail, but guess what? We're not going to shove it up the other guys. You know what? Okay?
Yeah.
And that's basically that's kind of an FU. It really is. It really
is. That's a league culture. He set a league culture. That's pretty good.
And so when we got away from the league culture, what this league was founded upon,
right,
with coaches like Ed Cooley moving to Georgetown, like Kadary Richmond now going from school to school. Hey, there's another one too that left Providence to go to Seton Hall.
Right.
Arway Duall.
Right.
So, I mean, look, I'm not going to begrudge a player who gets a better opportunity at another school. I'm not. I can't. Because you're
especially in today's environment. I mean, you know,
and you know what? It might be a change of environment, and all that player needs to get loose and get unhooked and go on to have a very good career. So I can't blame them at all for that. Kadary's, you know, I don't know his situation well enough where I can really, you know, offer a lot of insight other than to say that I was surprised and then I wasn't surprised.
Right.
Because in this day and age of NIL, you know, if you come up with a kind of package, and obviously St. John's, you know, has the capability of, you know, picking that up, I'm sure that was a tremendous factor here.
Yeah, we talked to Coach Holloway about that, and we didn't go too deep into it because you could tell it was a real sore spot. I mean, you know, his wife kind of took him under her wing and that kind of thing, and it was a sore spot for Coach, and we didn't really press on it, but man,
he didn't want to talk on the personal side. The other side, though, he said the same thing. You're never going to begrudge a kid for an opportunity to take care of their family, or some more money.
But guys, what are we teaching? What are we teaching here? Okay.
Yeah.
We're teaching, you know, to follow the buck. We're not doing anything about loyalty. Okay. Loyalty is flown out the friggin' window. We're not teaching anything really about what I would call adulting. We're not. And I know that, you know, this is a free market society and all should be fair in love and war and Big East basketball. Okay. I guess I understand that thought process, but sometimes there's just a right thing to do and not a right thing to do. And I'm not convinced that this was a completely right thing to do. In Kadary's instance, I know that money was a huge factor here.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, really? Is that what we're going to do? We're going to chase dollar bills now, y'all? Is that what we're going to do?
You know, it's funny because, you know, when we picked the school, when Sonny and I were playing, we picked the school for a fit. That doesn't happen anymore. You pick the school now who's going to pay you the most bucks. And, you know, if that school can't do it, it's too easy. Listen, do you think he loved Coach Boeheim every single day? Do you think I loved Rowley every single day? You know, I'd be lying to you if I told you that. I mean, it was more after we were done being working for him than it was, you know, while you were on the court. He had to make decisions, you know.
But you've allowed players to move just as freely as coaches.
Yeah.
So because
Yeah,
they
but still,
coach
Sonny,
him,
I mean, what I'm getting at is it was difficult at times for people
no
like,
question, you got to face some adversity.
but you don't turn around and leave and quit. You
Yeah.
don't do that.
What's the
Now
lesson?
That's the issue, guys. The issue at
that
hand is
lesson's gone.
we're not teaching adversity.
No.
Kids
No,
now,
that's right.
athletes now,
Coping.
when the going gets tough, they get up and get going themselves.
Sure.
They don't learn what it's like to stick around and fight. They don't learn what it's like to go through a few bumps in the road. And when you fall down to pick yourself up, they're like, I'm going to turn around and take my ball and go play elsewhere. We're not
Right.
teaching anything. And if you're going to be like that your whole life, I got to tell you, there are going to be some situations that, that come later in
You're
life.
not going to make it. Listen, Coach Massimino would tell us the true guy comes out during times of adversity. It's easy to be a good guy and nice to everybody when the ball's going in the basket.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's
listen,
true.
It's going to be a great season, though, I think. Though,
yeah, and I'm looking forward to that rivalry. I think everybody's looking forward to that game. St. John's and Seton Hall. To see that.
Oh yeah, it's another one.
It'll be just as pleasant an experience as it was for Ed Cooley at Providence.
I'm wondering how he's gonna get treated when he comes back to Walsh. It's gonna be crazy.
But interesting for a kid versus a grown man.
Listen, I don't think there's a big difference there, Sonny.
Honestly, there's a big difference.
Well, I think the fans from Seton Hall feel betrayed just as much as they did when Ed.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as a player, dealing with that as a 20, 21-year-old kid, as opposed to a 40-year-old man, that's a different conversation, I think.
Yeah.
But he's still going to get.
And you're right, Sonny.
There's no doubt.
Sonny, you're 100% right. It should be that way. But I think there are a lot of fans that don't make that distinction.
I don't begrudge the fans. I just think that's going to be a challenge for that young man.
It will be.
Listen, there's a lot of things that challenge these young guys. Thank God they didn't have social media when we played, son. And listen, I had a tough time. People telling me I stink to my face. Never mind on social media. Oh my God, I don't know how I would have handled that, man.
And the phone cameras, take those away.
Well, listen. We're up against it, John. Thank you so very much for coming on. We really enjoyed talking with you. And, best of luck. Have a great season. And I will definitely stop by and say hello when I go visit my good buddy Mark Plansky in Providence and come to check out a game. So especially definitely the Nova game for sure. We might get to a couple others too.
Good. Well, please do. Please come by and say hello, guys. Anytime.
Certainly will.
Chit chat hoops, give me a buzz. I'd love to do it. It's a pleasure to be with both of you.
Yeah, stay in touch. Oh, by the way, Sonny and I are available if you ever need us on This Week in the Big East. We know Kevin too. I mean,
I'm glad you
Sonny
said that.
All right, Sonny, you can make your schedule available, right? You push a few patients off
for you guys.
There you go.
That's for you guys.
We can work on a little reciprocal deal. I think
that's right. There you go.
Hey, this is called synergy, baby.
I love that. That's good. All right. Well, you've been listening to and watching the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Sparrow. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Dow Gurney. Check us out on all things social media by putting Big East Rewind in the search bar and on our website, www.bigeastrewind.com. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.